All right, we are live, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. Welcome back to Kayfabe Corner. Very excited for this episode. I'm, of course, your host, JPO, Jordan Pierce Owens. Joined today by two very special guests. We have Aria Blake and TJP, TJ Perkins here. Aria, TJ, how's everyone doing tonight?
Good. How are you?
Good, good. It's been a minute. We just said it's been a couple years. I've known you technically since day one, Aria, as far as wrestling goes. We'll get into that here pretty soon. Here, TJ, long fan since the Puma days, so excited to talk to you as well.
Thank you
Literally,
for
that is the
watching.
first.
I appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely, man. That literally is the first question. How is everyone? You guys doing good over there? Where you at? Vegas now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I miss Florida so much. So
Uh,
much.
Oh, really? Yeah, I was going to talk to you about the differences between Florida and Vegas wrestling, and we'll get into all that here pretty soon. Here, let's start with the origins of wrestling. Not even necessarily being in it. Where does wrestling first come to you, just in general? And whoever wants to go first.
Disclaimer, you're gonna hear our son like making
Ah,
noises. He's not that far away.
He's
no
unofficially
problem at
on
all.
the podcast. We just couldn't fit him on the nameplate.
What T-shirt are you wearing there, TJ?
Oh, it's a Blink 182 shirt, actually.
I thought so. Literally my favorite of all time. So
Oh,
fantastic
good,
shirt, in
good.
my opinion.
Awesome.
Yeah, I love everything. So I heard they're getting back together, I believe now.
I hope so. There was a short period of time where they had a residency out here, and I
Oh,
didn't get a chance to see them. There was one show that I got tickets for, and then I missed the show, and then they stopped the residency, and I have yet to see them. So I hope they
I'm
do it.
sadly in the same boat. I've seen Angels and Airwaves. Somehow I have not seen a Blink show. So next time, whenever they're back in Florida, I gotta find it. But
Do you
okay, so
do your
uh,
origin story first?
origin story, just wrestling in general. Where does it come to your life in general?
um, Baby, let me answer this question. All right.
I'm gonna get him.
So my wrestling origin story, I guess. Started watching at the end of 2008 and became an instant fan. Saw a Divas match and was like, oh my God, I need to do the same thing.
Do you
And
happen to remember the match?
I do. It was Maurice versus Michelle McCool, and Maria was the guest ref. And
He's
James
also a
has
fan.
some,
He's also
he
a
has
fan of the
some
match.
opinions on it. No, I think TJ is getting him set up in his crib potentially. Yeah, so he can go sing in there. But yeah, so I got into wrestling and I knew I wanted to do that. So when I was 19, I joined the Uproar Pro Wrestling Academy. And you're probably the only interviewer that knows exactly what I'm talking about. I always mention that to people, and the school's had like 20 different names now. But that's what it was when I joined. But before that, I was the ring girl. I had started doing that like the end of 2013, beginning of 2014. So I had been doing that before I ever wrestled. And it was fun. It was a nice like toe in the water. But when the school opened, I was like, finally, like this is obviously it. Like it's right in front of me. So I went for that. I was the first to sign up because I was at the show when they like announced it and everything. So
Hmm.
that was pretty convenient. And then training started. It was me and a few others, literally a class of 5, I think. Very, very small. Um, Super fun. The training was never like, it never was that type of training where I left and was like, I hate this. I feel like I'm being taken advantage of. I feel like this is more of a workout class than a wrestling class. Like, thankfully Jay knows that like he's a wrestler, he's not a personal trainer. So
I was just say, just so the people at home, is that who was the lead trainer of the Uproar?
yes, at the time it was just Jay Lethal doing the training, and then we would have Angelina Love come in every now and then. She lived around the corner, so like they would have a couple of their friends come in help out here and there, but it was mostly Jay. And yeah, training under them was so great. I learned a lot from each of them individually, and I started training. Oh, he's bringing James over. My story doesn't matter. Hold on.
All right, let's see him. If you're cool
All
with it.
dressed in his little mini TJ outfit.
Oh, here we go.
And so it's James.
Yes.
Two of my best friends' names.
No flash, buddy.
He had no clothes on a second ago. So, hey, buddy.
Yeah, because he's a mess.
How old is James?
He is 8 months old.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
Oh, and is he rocking Dad's t-shirt there? Is that what that is?
Sort
it
of.
is kind of.
Okay, it looks like your colors.
Got Kobe's logo on it.
Oh, okay.
Actually, a present from Josh Alexander and Jade Chung.
Ah, very nice, very nice. That's a featured dream match right there. Your kid versus their kid.
We have an
And Rich
ideal
Swann
tag.
Jr.
Yeah, that's the ideal.
Yeah. Feature dream triple threat right there. Book it now, somebody. While their rates are low. So I'm always interested too in origins of names. I've told you before, I love the name Aria because it's one of my nieces. I always wanted to book you versus Ava's story because Ava's another story, another niece of mine. But where does Aria Blake come from? Where did that name originate?
I've just always liked that name, honestly, and Blake sounded like it worked with it. I just knew that, okay, I like the name Aria, and I think through my head, I'm just like Marie, Lee, other names, whatever. And Blake, I was like, Aria, Blake, Aria, Blake. All right, the syllables sound right. Like in my head, hearing like an announcer voice, that sounds right. So I just went with it. But I think where I first found the name Aria might have been like Pretty Little Liars. And then I was a fan of Game of Thrones, and that like just it kept being repeated in my head every Sunday night. So I was like, that's my name.
And that's never changed, right? You've never been under anything else? Ooh, I feel there's a story coming.
I have had one other ring name.
Go on.
I think it was given to me, and I hated it from day one. The whole thing felt like a rib, but when I first started, I was not Aria. I didn't really have a name yet. This was like early 2014, so I was still this dumb little ring girl that was just learning how to wrestle. And I got an opportunity to manage at FIP, and I needed a name. So the promoter came up with a name for me, and it was Nikki Needs, but Needs spelled KNEADS or DES, one of those. Stupid, hated it, was so horrible. I never used it more than like maybe 2 or 3 shows, and just she's dead. She got in a bus and like died.
Poor Nikki Needs.
It sucked. Dude, it was way back when, and like I can't even really talk about too much because like half the people I was working with at the time are canceled into oblivion. So like Nikki Needs dead, everybody in that storyline pretty much dead. So yeah, it pretty much never happened.
Okay, now Nikki, no more. So TJ, you've been at this for a very early age. Where does wrestling start with you, even before wrestling?
It's how long have you watched? How old are you? How long have you been watching wrestling?
31. So
Okay,
day one for me, basically. So 90s, early 90s.
So do you remember like this might predate the early 90s, but actually it does. But there used to be this old show opening for WWF where it was like the steel gradient logo kind of like flying over the water, and then it would come up into the sky, and there was like lightning, and it said like WWF, what the world is watching, and then that was the show opening, right? That was like the era that specific like opening screen is like the earliest memory I have of life. Is I remember seeing that show opening when I was like, God, I mean, not James's age, but not much older. I was 2, 3 years old, and watching TV in Kansas City, where I was born originally. At a time, 1984, 85, where there was a lot of stuff that became sort of core memories and core interests for people at that time. The Ghostbusters, Ninja Turtles, He-Man, Star Wars, all this stuff was like at its peak around that time. You know, Back to the Future, all these things came up around that time, and I was into all those things. That was the primary inspiration for the retro character that I played on WWE.
Mm.
But wrestling was always really the first interest I ever had. It was the first thing I latched onto, and it's always been that way.
Who was that? Who was like the number one guy? Who are you really into?
You know, I grew up in like the Hogan era. I think I was always a big Hogan guy. I was a big Ultimate Warrior guy. A lot of those classic characters in the beginning, you know, is what I really liked. Macho Man, Jake the Snake, $1 Million Man. Basically anybody that if you were to go in the mall and just ask somebody like about wrestling, and they're not really a wrestling fan, the names that they would come up with, you know, Roddy Piper. Just there's like 5-6 guys that like even non-wrestling fans have heard the name for decades, so they just know, oh, $1 Million Man, that's a wrestler, right? You know, and they don't even watch wrestling, they just know. Like that was the era I grew up in, and oddly enough, despite I guess a reputation for being more of a modern wrestler, I aspire to be like those guys more so than anything else. But yeah, that's really what I grew up on. I remember when I was younger, there was a 2-week span where my best friend in school, he was also a big Hulk Hogan fan, but I became a big Ultimate Warrior fan. And for like 2 weeks, we wouldn't pass the ball to each other at recess, like at soccer. Because I was mad that like he didn't want to be a Warrior fan with me, but he was mad that I didn't just stick to Hulk Hogan. So.
Little feud there. Aria, what about you? You mentioned the first match you saw. Was there anyone that you were particularly kind of glued to early on?
Definitely the 3 women that were in the match, who all to this day are still some of my favorites. I really and still do like Jeff Hardy, Rey Mysterio, Edge. I was really into like SmackDown was the first show that I had seen between like SmackDown and Raw, because that's like just what was on at the time. So I kind of just like was more invested in that roster and the storylines. And at the time, my Friday evenings were just all that.
Glued to that Friday Night SmackDown. So I was saying before, TJ, what age do you get into it? I believe very early, right?
Yeah. When I started doing it?
Yeah, when you actually start getting involved, yeah.
I was 13 when I started doing it. I was.
Where are you living at this point?
Southern California. Yeah, I mean, I was born in Kansas City, but I moved. My parents moved the family to LA when I was like 3. So my sister and I moved to LA when we were like babies still.
Okay.
But I started when I was 13, and I remember specifically it was let's see, sometime around 1996. So I was maybe 11 or 12, something like that. I went to WrestleMania 12, and that's kind of how I track my age now that I'm old. My age is I'm the same age as WrestleMania. So like whatever the most recent WrestleMania was, that's my age that year. So I went to 12, and that was the Iron Man with Brett and Sean. And, you know, around that age, you start to do like career day projects and stuff in school. You know, you're about like junior high age, and you get geared towards that. And so it became apparent to me that was, if I really wanted, I always thought I'd be a wrestler. I never thought I would be anything else. I don't know why. It wasn't like an act. Like I didn't think it was a smart thing to do. I just thought nothing ever occurred to me that I would do anything else. And I got to that age, and it started occurring to me even more that in order to do it, you know, I'd have to actually start building, you know, the path to how I'll do it, because, you know, you do these career day projects and you tell them all. I'm sure every boy at least has done this once, like for like a career day project, they choose something like, you know, movie star or like athlete, and the the teacher tells them they're full of shit, basically, like, because that's not realistic. And that's every teacher's way of crushing kids' dreams. That's their favorite day of the year, probably. So after hearing that a couple times when I'm 10, 11, 12 years old, I was like, well, they're not wrong. If I want to do it, I have to have a reasonable way to figure it out. So I guess it was around that time that I started looking into how to even get started. So, keep in mind in 97, 98, so I started in 98, like she's going to love this. Like the internet barely existed and social media wouldn't be around for like another, 10 years maybe. And so I would just look up, I would see the advertisements in like PWI magazine for wrestling schools. Dean Malenko had a school in Florida at the time. There was like, Larry Sharp and just different things, all pro wrestling up in San Francisco. But all these places were always really far away. And Shawn Michaels had put out things for his school that was upcoming because he had retired in 98 initially. And so if I was old enough, I probably would have been in that first class with Danielson and Spanky. But I wasn't old enough to relocate. So I got started actually earlier than them, but just in California. So it's funny how fate works out in that way. But I just started writing to these schools, and then, it further occurred to me that my age was going to prevent me from doing it, because at the time it was also sort of unheard of to start really young that way.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, how was there any blowback from the schools or your parents? Like, how do you like 13's like the dream? That's what I wanted to be at 13, but it just wasn't possible. How did you make that work?
Well, it wasn't so much blowback as it was just reality. So initially it was a no from everybody because I would have to relocate. There wasn't anything. I mean, I thought, I didn't know, because again, the internet, like it's hard to know what even is in your hometown because you just don't know, right? Because the internet wasn't what it is now. So initially it was a no because I would have to relocate, and I was only 13, and that wasn't going to work. And then pretty much all the schools, all the different gyms were like, you had to be 18 or even 21 and over to do it. It's not like how it is now where there's, waivers and insurances and more acceptable accommodations to start if you're like 16 or something like that. It didn't used to be that way. So there was a couple huge hurdles in that for my age. And it wasn't until, I guess, summer school, when I was starting high school, was in the summer of 98 is when I finished grade school. And then I went to high school, and I went to the summer classes right before you actually start the year. And there was a kid in the class that had a wrestling shirt, but it wasn't WWF or WCW. I didn't understand what it was. And it was for a school that was nearby in San Bernardino. And the School of Hard Knocks is still around. Jesse Hernandez still runs it. And he told me that's what it was. And he had started learning how to wrestle there. And he was like a year older than me in the class. And I went down on like a Saturday morning, and they were willing to train people because Jesse had primarily come up in Lucha Libre. So he didn't really, culturally speaking, they don't really look at it as an age thing. If you're old enough to do it, if you're capable physically, then they'll teach you how to do it. It's like boxing. If you can put the gloves on, you can do it. And so I started, and I picked it up naturally, and I blinked, and now I'm sitting next to her here, and I've done it for 24 years now.
Yeah, how many years? We're at 24 now.
It's 24.
Wow, fantastic.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that first ever match. Aria, I think I know your first ever match. Do you remember your first ever match?
Yes. Yeah, I definitely believe you were there. It was a student rumble, end of February. Wait, it's 6:19. He's showing me that it's 6:19 on the phone right now.
Booyaka.
That's really. Hold on. Anyway, so my first match was fun. Student rumble showcase. And it was the end of January 2015, so about 9 months after I started training. And it was really fun. Myself and Aspen Rose were the only 2 girls in it. I want to say that there's maybe 7 or 8 of us total in the match. I don't know. I can probably name everybody. It was me, Aspen, Troy Hollywood, Snoop Strikes, Hunter Law, Alex Payne. I miss you. Eric Curtis, Stephen Frick, Danny Vincent. And do you feel like I'm missing somebody?
I looked it up because I'm a nerd. I have results for every match, every show I've been to. I have 10 listed.
I'm
Law,
missing someone.
Danny, CJ, Troy, Alex, miss him. You, Aspen, Ronnie Rios,
Yes.
Eric Curtis, and then Frick.
Frick and Hunter, yeah.
Yes.
You won the match, and the thing for winning the match was that you got to get beat up by Mason Ryan. And the way that we determined who the winner was, it was whoever got to the school first that day. So regardless if it was me or Aspen, if we got there like a day early, we weren't gonna be subjected to that. So we're already starting from a negative. But yeah, it was fun, and I miss it, and I miss that Verizon Event Center that we used to hold shows
It's a
in.
nice little venue. Yeah, it was very
It
nice
was.
looking.
It was cute, and like it was weird that it was part Verizon store, part like wrestling venue.
Yeah, you wouldn't know it though when you watch footage of it. Like it was done up nicely.
Dude, I remember doing like photos with Speedy in like a closet. It was so just simple and adorable. But yeah, that was my first match and my first show.
Do you remember your first singles match now?
I do, unfortunately.
Oh, why unfortunately and who?
Because brother, it was trash. It was me and Aspen at Shine some number. I don't even remember, and if I did, I wouldn't tell you anyways because no one needs to see it. It was supposed to be a pre-show match. I think it got moved first. It had no business being even on a pre-show match. It was so bad. And this was like my 3rd match ever because I had that student rumble. Then I had a tag match where it was me, Troy, and Hunter versus Alex Green, Snoop Strikes, who I think then was still CJ Strikes, and Danny Vincent. And it was a pre-show match on like an ACW show. That was fine. Belonged on a pre-show. Went well. Hurt my foot. Was out for a long time. And then had this just awful match with Aspen. But can only go up. And I had
Absolutely, yeah. Trajectory. TJ, do you remember yours? And also, what is the original name and gimmick of you? Actually, is it Puma or is there something before that?
So my first match was in black and white.
Gordon Sully commented on it.
Yeah, it's a silent film, and they play a piano in the background while you watch it, so that you have some sort of sound and ambiance. My first name in wrestling was actually a nickname that I had when I was younger, and it was Pinoy Boy because I'm Filipino. And I had a mask because so my first match was not something I was scheduled to do. A lot of the guys, so like I said, the training gym I went to was lucha libre based, and I came to find that there was a lot of those sort of hole in the wall gyms in the LA and Southern California area, all of them lucha libre based, just proximity to Mexico and the culture in the Southwest region. It was just a hotbed for that. So I was able to go to all these different places, and then my first match was just tagging along with guys who were picking up extra matches on the cards, on some of the local lucha libre cards. Because usually the way a lucha libre card is built, it'll be like 5 matches, and they'll do like say 3, maybe an intermission, then the semi, and then the Super Estrella, the main event. And usually match 1 or even 2 there's like multiple people that are yet to be named, and that's just because they'll take anybody who's on reserve. And so a lot of the guys that were debuting at the home promotion and wanted to get extra reps in or just get on shows, they would go pick up these matches on these shows. So I tagged along, And I was, I'd only been training a few weeks, maybe a month or two at the time. And, you just jump in the back seat of the car and go to the show. And the promoter put me in on, a 6-man tag or something like that. I don't remember. God, I mean, nearly anybody that was in it.
How old are you? Are you 13 or how old are you at this point?
13, yeah.
I'm still 13. Okay.
Yeah. So I started training in August, and then I think I turned 14. I turned 14 in September. So it was like a couple weeks into training, 2-3 weeks. And so he's putting me into this match, and I get dressed, and I have this outfit that looks like a very ill-fitting, like blitzkrieg type of outfit, like a top and pants, and just kind of baggy. It didn't really fit me very well, shin guards and all that. But I was so young. He said, I can't put you out there like this. So he went and grabbed a mask from the merchandise stand and gave it to me to wear. He said, you got to wear this to hide.
Was it someone's mask?
Yeah, the first 2 masks that I started in were just merchandise masks that were somebody else's mask. I actually have the one in my office over here. It's right underneath my finger right there. It's hard to see. It's dark, but it's
impossible to see.
I'll turn the light on. You might be able to see it. It is it's a black and yellow clown mask.
Clown mask?
Yeah, it's right there. It's a black and yellow clown mask with an open top, so the hair splays out, and it's Super Muñeco's mask. He actually just passed away this past year, I think. And he had a restaurant, I believe, in Mexico City. So it's funny because when I went, I say later, like as if I was old, but I was 18 when I moved to Mexico City, and when I was living there, I went to his restaurant with some of the guys, and I met him. And got to, hey, I don't think anybody understood what I was explaining, but it's like, I used to wear your mask.
Okay, did you tell him I wrestled you kind of sort of once?
So yeah, that mask, and there was another one, and the name escapes me whose mask it was, but they weren't as prominent as Super Muñeco. But yeah, those were my first 2 masks, and I wrestled as Pinoy Boy. I actually have a picture of my first match. I've posted it recently as a throwback, but I'll probably post it again sometime this week, just because it's been a long time. But yeah, that was my first, and a lot of my first few matches were like that. I would just pick up stuff on extra shows, and then slowly debuted in the home promotion, and that was that's pretty much it.
How long are you a Pinoy Boy?
Let's see. I was that up until I debuted in New Japan. My first 2 tours in New Japan, I was Pinoy Boy, and then after I did the Young Lions Cup, it was 19 maybe, because I got brought into the dojo system like a proper young boy, like a young lion. So when I graduated, so to speak, after the Young Lions Cup, that's when I became Puma, and they sent me to Mexico. I came back, I became Puma, and then I was that until. So
where does Puma come from though? Where does that mask, that idea, like?
So when I was brought into New Japan, they had this satellite gym in Los Angeles, the original LA dojo. It's not the same as the current one, although the current one is probably better. But the original one, I was there, and we would have regular visits from the president of New Japan and the director and different office members, just for evaluation, and they wanted to know how their investment was going. They had never done a satellite gym like that before, and sort of observe and all that. And part of the evaluation process, they had this 17-year-old kid that they were surprised how proficient I was at technical wrestling and how fast I was athletically. And Tiger Mask, the original Tiger Mask, is one of my idols. And so naturally, like Kobe and Michael Jordan, and you emulate your heroes. So I moved a lot like the original Tiger Mask, and they would take note of it. It's funny though, because the first time they saw me in the ring in the gym, they first I could hear that I still don't really understand Japanese, but I understand more than I did at the time. But I could hear them speaking to each other, and every now and then they would say Rey Mysterio Jr. And they thought, because I was doing a lot of lucha libre and I was very small, I was so small, that they were like, he's like Mysterio Jr. And keep in mind, this was 2001, 2002 at the time. So like Rey was not Rey now. Like he was just like WCW going into WWF Rey. So he was still kind of like a junior heavyweight, like a cruiserweight.
Yeah,
you know?
so very much, yeah.
So they thought, oh, he's like Mysterio Jr. But then they saw more of what I could do. And so they understood that Tiger Mask was maybe more of the comparison. And so my first couple tours, they would put me in matches with or against Tiger Mask, and I tagged with them. I'd wrestle them one-on-one a lot. This was number 4. And then after the Young Lions Cup, they said, well, let's create something for you that's more for you. And I remember they put a bunch of names, like cat names, on the board, like Jaguar this and all this stuff. And Puma wasn't even on the board. I was wearing Puma shoes at the time, and I just thought, what about this name? And 4 letters, all caps, and no moniker addition to it, like no mask, no kid, not just Puma. And they said they liked it, and then they had a couple mask makers experiment with a look, and that I just became that. They said, you'll be like an American version of Tiger Mask. But originally, before I was Puma, they almost rebooted an entire generation of old characters that were legacy characters. Because before Puma, I was actually given the character of Cobra 2. And so the reason being is because New Japan wanted to reintroduce the NWA Junior title, which had sort of lost prominence around that time. And part of that was going to be this big thing where Tiger Mask 4 was going to be pushed up the card as their top junior for a little bit. They wanted the NWA Junior title to be reintroduced and be part of the IWGP Junior title scene. And with Tiger Mask 4, they wanted some nostalgia brought back to the division. So that's how Rocky Romero became Black Tiger. And they asked Danielson to shave his head and basically be Dynamite Kid, without telling him be Dynamite Kid. They more or less positioned him to be Dynamite Kid. And there was another around that same generation in 1982, 83. There was another character named Cobra. He was a Canadian wrestler, and he was part of that junior foundation in New Japan. So Tiger Mask, Cobra, Dynamite Kid were the division at that time. So they wanted somebody to be Cobra, and they said, well, TJ will be Cobra. But the only thing that really stuck was Rocky Romero's Black Tiger. Danielson left New Japan shortly after that. I think they didn't agree on money or something like that. Ricky Reyes left for the same reasons, and Rocky Romero didn't have a partner, so he was able to continue being Black Tiger. And then in my case, they just felt like maybe a different character would be more fitting, so I became Puma.
When did the decision come in to take the mask off?
I never officially lost it, so I just stopped doing it. I think I just stopped doing it because I became Suicide.
Was that the first time the mask came off? You weren't TJ before that?
I had wrestled a few times as TJ, separate from Puma, but it just was never really acknowledged that there was a difference or anything like that. I just did, and when I was Suicide in TNA, they had brought me back into the company as Puma. They just hadn't had anything for me to do yet. Because I had been there off and on for 7-8 years as Puma, from 2003.
Were you signed as Puma at one point too?
No, I was always just sort of on loan because I was always with New Japan and I'd also spent time in and out of Ring of Honor. So I just kind of bounced around between, Ring of Honor and New Japan and CMLL. And so TNA was just part of that, I guess, quadrant of things I would do. New Japan was always really like my primary focus. But yeah, in 2012, years later, they brought me back in and I was no longer with some of the other companies. And in fact, I had asked for my release from Ring of Honor so that I could go to TNA. And I was at home, and it just came about that they didn't have an idea for me as Puma, but then they asked. I asked them, "Can I just be Suicide?" Because they had been wanting to bring it back, and they had at the time a rotating door of people to portray it. And I said, "I don't know if you guys have any plans for it, or if you even have somebody to do it, but I'm at home and I don't want to waste your guys' time. So I'd like to come to work. So if you guys don't have anybody else, I'll do it for a day. That's what you want." And they did. And the rest is history. It was really only meant to be a 1-day thing.
Oh, so it was initially your idea to come in as Suicide.
Yes. Yeah, I volunteered.
So where does the transition come into now? Okay, making it more of your own thing, doing the unmasking, becoming manic for a little while. How does that come about?
Well, I mean, they were writing this stuff like on the fly because it was never meant to be more than a 1-day thing. And then it enabled them to tell a story for Austin Aries because they wanted to position him and Chris Sabin in a certain way. And because of that, they had to sort of create canon, I guess, to use like comic book speak. Like they had to create canon for the character. Like where does it come from and who is really Suicide? So then they said, well, it's just good. It's going to be TJ because he's the one that's portraying it now. So then that cemented me as like the not always, but always have been Suicide. And then, yeah, it just kept going. And I think the transition at one point that because the character was growing, they unmasked it. They told the story that I was it. They needed more than just the origin story at that point. And I actually had asked if they wanted to change the name because we were set to do a pay-per-view in Boston. And I remember asking the office, Devon Dudley, I think is the producer that I had asked about this specifically, was, are they okay with the name? Because I felt like, because this was around the time that Boston bombing, the marathon thing had happened. And I was like, it's kind of times are changing, like with people and social media and things and awareness and progressiveness in certain ways. And I just thought, well, this, and the company was growing too. Like at the time, company was running big arenas. They were still with Spike. They were trying to go all in on being a top company in the country. And so at the end, for new wrestling fans to describe it, it's almost like what AEW is now. Like they were going big at the time. So I thought, maybe Suicide is a hard name to market for kids and things like that. So I asked if they wanted to change it. Now is probably the time. You unmasked me, the character's changing. You have a chance at wiping the board clean, and we can take it in a new direction. And they said, yeah, that's great. And I don't know who came up with Manic. I just had offered to make whatever change work, whatever they wanted. And then they came back one day and they said, how about Manic? I said, sure, I can do that.
Any other names floating around you guys talked about?
Well, I mean, I wasn't part of that process. You'd probably have to ask, I don't know, Eric Bischoff or something like that. He might have been more in the war room at the time for that. But they just said that was the only name they asked me, and I'll make anything work, and that was good enough for me. So,
how long were you Manic? How did that end?
My contract expired in 15, I think. So like, I don't know, 3-4 years later. And I had no aspirations of staying under contract, and they had a whole new set of people coming in, and a lot of guys were not going to be retained because they wanted to leave too. So I just was part of that group. And then I ended up moving on to WWE like within the next year.
Have you worn a mask since? When's the last time you wore a mask?
Gosh. Well, I mean, I was last couple of years I had brought Manic back for Impact. They had asked if I would bring it back, and so we got to do some fun stuff there. So the last couple of years, I've been able to do it again.
Do you miss it at all, or are you happy and totally glad without having to wear a mask?
I'm happy if I never have to do it again, but I missed it a little bit, I enjoyed doing it again recently because I was able to sort of do things with it that I had always intended from the beginning. Because when they first had taken the mask off, my pitch to them from a creative standpoint, and this was before like Finn and the Finn Demon, like Finn was still Prince Devitt in Japan and hadn't done this stuff yet. So it's hard to give them an example of what I wanted to do, but I was always a big fan of the Great Muta. And I told them, I said, well, why don't I just, now that you unmask me, people know who I am, like I'll be TJ every day. And then once, maybe twice a year, Suicide or Manic comes back, and then it'll be special. And the costume will change a little bit and the mask will look a little bit different every time. And I could make it more like macabre and horror based and stuff like that, and like do face paint and different things. And the office didn't understand it at the time, and rightfully so. I didn't have an existing example of it. So this more recent time, I was able to point to stuff like Finn Balor and things like that have since come across and been able to make like some of these ideas work. And so this is more along the lines of what I had intended to do from the beginning. So, I don't miss it, but it was nice to be able to sort of bring it back to what I wanted to do with it.
You both did spend some time with Major League Wrestling, MLW. Aria, what was your time like over at MLW?
All over the place. I started when I hurt my shoulder, so I wasn't active in any kind of way.
How'd you hurt your shoulder?
I took a bad German suplex and it popped out and did a bunch of other bad stuff. I have all these nasty surgery scars that you probably can't see on camera, but there's bad ones that go across my back and my shoulder. But yeah, so I was hurt and I knew that it was starting. So they brought me in as a social media correspondent, which then turned into being a backstage interviewer, which then turned into being a manager, which then turned into being a wrestler, which then went back to being a manager, which will hopefully go to something soon, now that I'm back wrestling pretty much full time. But yeah, started at, I guess, pretty much at the bottom. Had the first and only intergender match there.
Who's in that one?
Oof. It was me and MJF versus Taya and Joey Ryan.
Oh, okay. All your stories involved canceled people.
Dude, it's well, it sucks. It sucks when it's like weird to talk about a lot of the matches you've had. But I wrestled that one match for them. Did managing for, oh God. Oh. Dude, I thought someone was joining the chat.
I have his hair back.
I do have
no, just showing him clips. I can do clips.
I thought someone was invading. I was like, yo. But yeah, as you can see, that was happening, and it was fun. I really liked it, and I would definitely go back, especially now that like Taya is coming back. The women's division is really strong. Some people might need a healthy star manager.
You saying I can't talk?
Yeah.
Sorry.
But yeah, talk about how you went to MLW back in the hundreds.
Back in the hundreds.
And TJ, of course, you've been to MLW. You've been everywhere, man. You're one of those guys that I don't think there is a major company that you haven't shined in. Do you enjoy the fact that, especially now in the landscape, you can bounce between all these places? We've seen you in Impact in the last year. We've seen you in Kill It in New Japan. I just saw you recently with Dorada. I was at that show in Florida. MLW. Do you enjoy the fact that you can kind of go anywhere to a degree?
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I joked when AEW was launched a couple of years ago that it's like they have to launch new companies just to get something that's not on my resume. but yeah, I mean, even Lucha Underground, I was actually, before I went to WWE, I was set to start there. They had sent me an offer, and I had come in and done a match with Penta that didn't air. It was just for the house. So yeah, I mean, pretty much anything that's come up, unless it was like a rival situation. Like actually, even with CMLL, I'd done a couple AAA shows, but I just, like Noah I hadn't done because I was a New Japan guy. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's nice, I guess, but I just, I think it's just because I don't like. A lot of people make their career path based on who caters to them, maybe, and also because they consider legacy and things like that, like creativity. Certain things are more important to them, and there's nothing wrong with that. But in my case, I've never been wired like that. It's always it's a job, it's always been a job, and I've never seen it as more than that. And I think it's smart to not look at it as more than that, because that's when you start to lose. You become a slave to your own ideas and things like that. You don't want to be a slave to your dreams. They should inspire you, not trap you. So because of that, I've bounced around without any qualms, because I don't really care about what jersey I'm wearing. I'll play for any team, and it's been good. I thankfully have a roof over our heads, and the little man is fed, and the lights are on, so all is well, I guess. But and it's nice because then I also have a unique experience. I mean, I don't know that there's anybody that really actually has my resume in terms of that. Like, so there's a lot that I'm able to offer and I didn't realize this until people started asking me, like pulling me aside in the locker room and stuff. But there's a lot that I am able to offer that I didn't realize that other people don't have to offer. Because they're either too old or the resume just isn't as deep. And I'm a very, I guess, rare combination of somebody that's not old and done all these things.
Do you enjoy that factor now that you're kind of on the other end of, like, you have this great resume, you have the years now, you're now the mentor, you're now the people that people go to for advice? No, she says no.
It's about it. Hates it.
No, it's I never thought of myself as that, from the point that I started, and man, people about a year or two ago, people tore me to shreds over this because they misunderstood, I think, what I meant by it. But from the beginning of
me.
She's the only one that understands me. From the beginning, I always had a natural ability I always had a natural aptitude for this, and I always had a natural ability to lead people, not by being some sort of prominent figure or like some wise sage or anything like that. Although I probably was smarter than most people my age just growing up, generally speaking. But I've always had the ability to help others do what they need to do. One thing, but a weakness of mine is that I've never been somebody that naturally lights up a room. Like if there's an it factor, I probably don't have it. I'm not Jeff Hardy. When I walk into a room, people aren't just drawn to me. When I do something, people don't look at me and say, that guy's a star. I have to work for it. But what I've always been good at is doing everything else. And so I've always known I was a good leader, but I never saw myself as somebody that would be like a teacher or something like that, because I was always the youngest guy in the room. For 15, 20 years, I was the young guy in the room. Now all of a sudden, I'm the man in the room, and like there's younger kids now in the room, and I'm like, oh wow, like this sort of happened. This is new to me, and I like it because I didn't realize that I had so much to offer and to help people, and I didn't know how much this was valuable to people. And honestly, the first time I realized it was from Triple H when I was doing the Cruiserweight show or the Cruiserweight tournament. Only my maybe second, or actually maybe the first match I did, him and a lot of the office were waiting for me behind the curtain, and Hunter pulled me aside and asked me if I would consider being a producer and a coach someday. And like I said, this is just a job to me. I've never cared about the legacy of insert my name here. I don't give a shit about that sort of thing. If I disappear the moment I retire, that's fine with me. I don't care. But so I told him, I said, I'll retire right now if you want me to just be a producer. I'll coach right now if you want me to do that. I don't have here. You give me the clipboard, I'll give you my tights, and we're done. But he was like, no, we want you to wrestle. We just think that you might be really valuable because not a lot of people have experience at your age. And that was the first time that I thought that, wow, maybe he's right. Because I never thought about that. I always thought I'm the young guy. So it's not bad. She thinks it's bad or that I don't like it. But at times it can be overwhelming because sometimes I do get like an overwhelming amount of people asking me at once.
A literal line.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I wouldn't have otherwise said it, but sometimes I'll accompany her to shows because I love being the supportive husband. You know, I love holding the purse and watching her work. And when I go to shows, sometimes like, you know, sometimes people will literally like line up, and it becomes a little overwhelming. But I enjoy it. I like helping out, and I if it helps somebody in a way that didn't, because I didn't have mentors when I started. Nobody helped me like this. I would ask questions, and people like, you know, I came up at a time where it was like, fuck off, kid. Like, hey, we ain't got time for you. People didn't help like young guys at the time. And so I've flown blind for 24 years. And I like, it was in these last few years now is like I've become more ingrained in like becoming a leader because I started meeting a lot of my heroes and trying to pick their brain and try to seek out mentorship from them. And they couldn't answer the questions that I had. And it occurred to me that some of them, not that I've exceeded them or anything like that, and I would never suggest that I'm a bigger star or anything like that than other people. Like I said, that's a weakness of mine. I've never lit up a room. But from a mechanical standpoint and understanding what we do, understanding the game, like there's a lot of people that I've outgrown. And so it started making me think that I should pass this on to other people because nobody helped me when I was younger. And so if I can help some kid that's 22, 25 years old, and he otherwise would have just quit in a year because nobody would help him, I'm happy to do that because Lord knows I'm lucky to have been doing it this long. So
You talked a little bit about you know, Triple H, the Cruiserweight. What was the hope for you going into that Cruiserweight Classic? Because obviously you went into it, I believe, unsigned. When were you signed? Did you have any idea of when you might be winning it or the title? Like, how does that all evolve?
yeah, I didn't sign until the pay-per-view when me and Spanky wrestled at Clash, the champions.
Oh, so you were champion and you had already won it and you hadn't signed yet?
Yeah, no, I hadn't signed.
Okay.
I turned down the first few offers. The way that played out after the second round, a couple people had been signed prior, and I don't mean the NXT people. There's a couple NXT people, you know, Gargano, Ciampa, Swan. They had already been under contract. Some of the Europeans had been signed simply for visa purposes. So they were like, well, we'll just go ahead and make them their offer early, even if they become a bust, because we have to get visas for them. So they need to sign something. So like, you know, I want to say maybe like Gallagher and some of the guys had, for visa purposes, they did that. I think Zach was able to work anyway. Maybe he already had a visa or something. I don't know. But he was already working in the U.S. before that. So he didn't need to sign anything, I don't think. But anyway, after the second round, they got like all 30 of us. And there's a viewing room at Full Sail, a big theater, like a classroom theater, right? And that's where you could watch a show when you're done wrestling, and catering is in there. It's a big, you know, theater, like an IMAX theater. And they had like 4 stations set up after the show. This was the night that I wrestled Gargano. So yeah, second round. And they had these stations set up, you know, Canyon and Regal, and I think Norman Smiley and Albert, and all, like a lot of the different people from the office were kind of split into pairs at each of these 4 like areas. And they would just call us up one by one and make offers to us. So we were watching people like too far away for us to hear, but we were watching them negotiate, basically. Yep, it was right after this match. I remember because Johnny split my eyelid open on the corner move that he does, the lawn dart. And when I hit the turnbuckle, the seam on the turnbuckle split my eyelid like a boxing injury. And I didn't know I was cut, But at the same time that I hit the corner, my leg went over my head and wrapped around the rope. And so I tore my meniscus, I think, on that move. So afterward, you could see when he pins me, I'm holding my knee, and after the whole, which is funny because I hurt his knee, but I really hurt my knee. That's another thing, I guess, like an Easter egg for people. I had to do the whole tournament from the point on with the torn meniscus because I didn't want to tell them I was hurt, because then they would have stopped using me. I didn't know I was going to win either until the last day. So I just wanted to get the payday. I didn't really know or care if I was winning or not. But anyway, my point is, it was after that show, because I remember I went to the back and I was trying to like pretend that my leg wasn't hurting, and they said, "Are you okay?" Like they were all waiting for me behind the curtain. They're like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm fine. I'm totally fine." And they're like, "Well, you need to get a towel for that." I'm like, "A towel? What the fuck are you guys talking about?" But it's because I was bleeding out of my face, and they're like, "God, your eye, that's terrible." I'm like, "Oh yeah, it's fine. I'm fine." But yeah, we were sitting there in the viewing room, and everybody was getting called up to do their offers. And Zach and I, we've been friends a long time. And so I remember talking to him about it. He wanted to go to New Japan. And so he wanted to ask them for more time, like to think about it, like if he could just revisit it in a year or something like that. And I told them I was going to start with Lucha, or to him and them. I'd say I was going to start with Lucha Underground. I wanted to go back to New Japan as well. I'd been in TNA for a few years. I kind of wanted to get back to Mexico and do these things. So I was dead set on turning him down as well. Metallic kept asking him for more money, because that's what he does. He always gets more money. They made me an offer, and I said no. They upped the money. I said no again. They upped the money again, and I still said no. But then Regal was like, "You should maybe think about it. If you don't like it, you could always leave." And he kind of talked me into it. He said, "I've reached an age where I probably should stop bouncing around everywhere." And he was right. It's about the age to be like how I am now. Think about starting a family, buying a house, stuff like that. And so they finally gave me an offer that I said sure, but this was after the tournament now at this point. They sent it, and I signed it like a week after I'd won the title. So yeah, I could have been like Medusa or whatever.
Just drop it.
Yeah.
You mentioned before about like Regal saying, "Hey, if you don't like it, you can leave." Is that ultimately what happened? What was like the final days of being there?
So, a little bit. I thought that I just felt like I was wasting Vince's time and money. I don't like that. And I don't mean to sound like so altruistic or something like that. It's not I guess I am, but that's not really the case. I just felt like, and I don't, like I said before, it is just a job. So it's not like the money was bad. I've made great money. And so I wasn't like chasing creative freedom or anything like that necessarily. I just felt like my words to him exactly were that as a commodity, I don't feel like I'm a commodity to you. I'm a good wrestler, but everybody in your company is a good wrestler. Everybody is. Cesaro's a great wrestler. Kevin's a great wrestler. Everybody's a great wrestler there. And what I was in the CWC as the Filipino American and all that, like connecting with Asian Americans and certain demographics and the culture and everything, that they went away from that when I got to Raw. And so I had told them, I don't want to waste your time and money. And I knew that I could make as much money or more by leaving anyway. So it was like, if I might be happier and still have the same quality of job, then I would like to not waste his time. But, he was, instead of saying, okay, fine, we're going to release you, he said, well, how can we use you better? So that was in 2018. I knocked on his door in London at the arena and told him that. And he asked me how they could use me better. And I don't believe in quitting. So I said, I'll show you. And I spent the rest of the year making my own appearances and things and doing stuff with Filipino charities and doing red carpets and interviews, and did some media, did stuff with Manny Pacquiao and stuff like that. Organized with groups that do like Filipino heritage things, like at baseball games and NFL games and, NBA games and things like that, and how they can incorporate like food trucks and charities and things and do that for Raw and for WWE. And I put all this together in a package for Vince, and he loved it. Obviously, he's very business minded. So then the thing was, well, we need to think of creative for you then, because you got to get off of 205. You got to go to Raw. No offense to everybody that was real big fans of 205. I appreciate it, but I mean, that definitely is not the engine that it ever, was meant to be, I guess. And that's kind of where we both hit a wall, because, he's trying to introduce a character to Raw that was not meant to be taking up space on that show. And that's hard, that's like introducing a new character to The Simpsons or The Walking Dead or something like that. It's a TV show for a reason, and I was not part of those investor meetings or the campaign to write the show. I'm not part of the yearly plans. So it was kind of daunting for him to want to shoehorn me in there. So we both had written ideas and wrote, different creative stuff. And I tried to write, in anything, like not most guys that knock on Vince's door, that their pitch is basically, well, I'll win the world championship. I didn't want to write that. I wrote a couple things that were maybe in that vein, like with maybe other titles or something like that. But most of the stuff I wrote was like, how can I tell a story with me and Jinder and like wrestle the Bollywood boys? Or like, how can I tell a story with me and like Finn Balor and Lashley were in a thing at the time. And I was like, well, this way you can get matches with me and Leo Rush. I know Leo had a hard time being so small. They didn't have a lot of guys for him to wrestle. So I was really trying to problem solve with my writing. Like, what can I write for them that they need a solution for that they don't have one? And stuff that isn't just like top of the card stuff, but bottom of the card, middle of the card, funny stuff, whatever. I'll steal Elias's guitar and then we'll have a thing, like, whatever, something like that. And, nothing really stuck, or they felt like those were stories that were better suited for other characters. So some of them actually did get given to other characters, and that's fine. That's part of it. And so at the point where it was like creative just wasn't going to work, and they wouldn't be able to just shoehorn me into that show. It was like, well, I don't want you to be unhappy and feel like you're stuck here. So we're going to release you and go out and spread your wings and do what you want to do. And that was it.
Yeah, even as an indie promoter, gotta love when the pitch ends with, and then I win the world title.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with a lot of guys is they, and there's nothing wrong with having those dreams and goals, I guess, but it's pretty easy to tell that's kind of a headache. If you're the administrator, it's a headache to have to field that pitch 30 times.
Yeah. Oh, you go undefeated and you win the title. Yeah, I can see why you like that idea.
Yeah.
Final question for that kind of era: do you still have the medal?
Yeah, actually, and I got a second one because Zack Ryder came across like the mold to make the medals. I don't know how.
He would.
But he texted me one day and was like, hey, do you want this? And I said, well, I already have the medal. And he goes, no, this is actually the mold to create the medal. I don't know how he got it. And I said, okay, sure. So he sent it to me. So I have the medal still. And the only thing I don't have is a trophy, but I was never going to take that thing. That thing is like, it was as tall as me for one.
Any idea, is that just in a warehouse one day or
it's
somewhere?
probably in the PC. If you walk around the PC, and you can see it in some of the video tours and stuff, but like they have everything in there. They have like the Dusty Cup. They have like everything that's at the Hall of Fame exhibits and access, like at WrestleMania Access. All that stuff is in the PC on display. So that trophy is in there somewhere.
Aria, any wants to wear a mask yourself? Are you gonna ever debut in a mask?
I think it looks cool for sure, but like I like doing makeup, and it wouldn't work. It's like hot and sweaty, and just I don't know. Like if I would do it for maybe like a one-off, like a Lucha Libre show on a holiday or something, or on an event, but.
Yeah, you don't sound very excited.
Just sounds hot.
What are some of your favorite matches you've had, Aria? Who have you really clicked with?
Ooh, a lot of the matches you've booked were me versus the artist formerly known as Roxy Riot, Roxy Rouge, now Jody Morton. We've wrestled each other a zillion times. Our chemistry is really, really good. Same applies to Chelsea Durden. Like, we've had matches together, and like that's like how we became like best friends, like as a result. Oh man, which one's this? It's me. Look at that's me. Oh man, I think I jokingly told her she can't have red hair, and she anyway.
You always had really great gear. Now, like when you think of stuff, you always rave over how great your new gear sets are whenever you get new gear. But I look at your past gear and I'm like, man, your old gear was awesome.
It was. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that always something on your mind, Aria? Is that something you put in? Yeah, because he is sure. Like, it's very professional gear from pretty much the get-go, from what I remember.
She's very creative. She's constantly drawing up stuff.
Yeah, I love drawing. I wish I knew how to make gear like the way that like my opponent in that video, she makes gear like her own gear and for a couple of other people. And I'm like, she one time I feel so bad because I lost it. She made me a sewing book and like typed out 16 pages or so of instructions. And God knows where.
I saw that book too.
It makes me feel worse because I clearly did not become a sewing master. But no, she gave it to me at one of the shows at the karate school that we used to have shows in. And it never surmounted to any gear, unfortunately. But maybe one day. I would love to make gear.
You design it though? You said you're actually the one that draws it up usually?
Yes. I will do that. I'll add the stones to it, like these kind, the small ones. I can do everything but sew, really. I want to learn next how to actually draw them, draw gear and stuff on like an iPad. Like, I want to get a newer iPad, get the Apple Pencil, and like really just commit to making professional looking gear for other people.
Same thing for you, TJ. Where does your gear come from? Are you designing it at all, or you just look for something good, or you've worn a lot of different gear over the years?
I'm a terrible designer. I can't draw for shit. She's drawn some stuff for me actually lately, but a lot of it is. I mean, you do this for a long time. You start to have to change stuff just because you get bored, I guess. I don't know. And I've played so many different characters, so there's different things that I'd wear, and I did it at such a young age. So like physically, I've changed so much over the years. So certain things just portray me differently. Trunks versus tights versus short.
I was gonna ask, do you have a preference? Yeah, because you've worn pretty much it all.
It seemed like, I mean, I've liked them all, but it seemed like the jogger pants in WWE that I wore, most people really love those, and I like them too. But man, every day people are like, "Man, you should wear that again." That people really liked that look, and I liked it. And the shorts that I have now, I like. I'd done it in the early 2000s. It became a big trend later, like with the machine guns and different people with similar type of gear, and so I like it because it is unique, and you can sort of influence your style like from like a clothing standpoint, and it can be more. It could look more like wrestling gear, or it could look more like streetwear, depending on what you do with it. So I've always liked it for that reason, and it's just simply more comfortable. It's very comfortable.
Going back to you, Aria, you mentioned Roxy, Chelsea. Anyone else like to shout out?
Oh, let's see. Who do I not hate? I like wrestling Sue. I wrestled her at Girl Fight in Orlando, one of my first matches against somebody that had been wrestling significantly longer. I wrestled Mercedes Martinez and Evilise, and they're both incredible professionals and hit harder than anybody. My favorite match ever was not recorded. It was me versus CJ O'Doyle versus Saiva Sabah, and it was at Fest Wrestling, and it was the first match on the card, so the cameras weren't like going by then, just because of our placement. It was they didn't have their shit together in time, I guess. But
Oh
yeah, I've
no.
been looking for it for so long, and not that long ago, CJ told me that, like, yeah, the cameras, it was never recorded. All I have now are like Instagram memories of it. But that was a really fun match, and I've wrestled CJ a few other times in hardcore matches. There was one where I super kicked him onto a barbed wire device of sorts, hit him with the wrong side of the chair there because the dildo was on that side.
Oh, I just saw that.
Yep. If you get to the end, it's graphicer. There's a thing going up like
Did you just say graphicer?
graphic. Yeah, this was fun. One fun match I had that I think only you will know about is I wrestled that girl Ravenna. Do you remember her?
Raven?
No, Morgana. That's it.
Morgana. Oh wow, yeah. There's a
God,
blasphemy.
that was so long ago, but it was good and it was fun. And then she quit right after.
Yeah, she did. Yeah, I saw her at
Oh, where
what was
are
it Dave and
you?
Buster's last time I saw her.
Oh, shit. Oh man, girl, come back. We had a good match.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, one of those. Yeah, that's why I almost become jaded with wrestling about like who's gonna stick around
There
because
it is,
you think
dude.
you think they show potential and yeah, I don't know what happened.
Oh man, that was fun. I need to go back and watch these matches from when I was like 2 years in. These are cute.
All right, TJ. What about you, man? Who have you really enjoyed spending the ring with?
Fuck all those guys. They're on their own. I'm just
All
kidding.
right.
No, I mean everybody. I get asked. It's not quite the exact same thing, but maybe this will sum it up a little bit better. Because I get asked a lot about bucket list things, what's your dream match? What would you like to do? And this, and when people ask me like what's my favorite match or what's my dream match, I always say the next one. Because that, like, I learned long ago that once you put something out, it doesn't belong to you anymore. It belongs to the fans, and you can't get it back. So if you really liked it, you can't relive it, and if you didn't like it, you can't redo it. And you have 1,000 more to do if you're in this for a long time, which I have been. So I've learned to let go of a lot of things. I don't get too terribly sentimental about stuff. So when people ask, well, what's your dream match? I always say the next one. I just forget about everything in the past. Not totally, but a little bit. And so I've loved working with everybody because I've never had a problem with anybody. So I've never disliked any of it, but I've always especially liked it because, like I said, my skill has never been elevating myself. I've always been good at making stuff work. So every day that I've gone to work for the last 24 years has been the challenge. The fun challenge has always been how can this guy leave this match better than before he came into it. And so I've enjoyed it with everybody. Even before I knew that I was helping people, I still looked at it that way. I just didn't realize the value in it at the time. But there's guys that I just enjoy being around more. So it's not even necessarily about the work. I enjoy working with them, but sharing the cars and the rooms and stuff with. And, Swan, which is great. He was my guy. In WWE. Lindsay as well. Cedric, Metallic. We were kind of a crew, so to speak. Josh Alexander is a great friend of mine. Rocky Romero is probably my oldest friend in wrestling. Him and Joe, they're like my big brothers. So, hey, there's my boy Rich. He hates when I do that. But yeah, I mean, like a lot of the guys, especially those ones that I mentioned, they're people that I'll someday when I'm 80 years old, I'm still gonna catch up with them. So I love those guys.
He's a really weird kind of like nitpicky question. I'm always curious. Is it just TJP now? Do we call you TJ Perkins? Is it just TJP? And where do you decide to abbreviate it? Just why? I'm just curious.
You say that because when I was typing our names in this lower third. I
Right.
was like, "Do you want me to put your name or your initials?" And he's
Yeah,
like,
like I don't even know. Like,
"Here."
what do I
And
say?
I'm
Like, I'm
"I
just
just
curious.
give me an answer."
So back around the time of, I'll say, Dragon Gate USA era, right? Evolve 1, like around that time. So the first time I was ever put on like a flyer as my initials was actually, I think, Evolve 1. Gabe did it. And he did it because at the time, it sort of became a pet name from fans who just abbreviated TJ Perkins to TJP. It wasn't super popular, just something that like was at the time like something that people said, and it was a lot like like in other things like Y2J or HBK or in basketball, Chris Paul, CP3, stuff like that, and so it sort of stuck. And when he and others would say, "Can we just bill you as this?" I said, "Sure." When I did the Best of the Super Juniors, 11 years ago, 2011, they had me return instead of TJ Perkins, they put TJP, which is now confusing because there is a TJP women's promotion as a sweet cat.
Yeah, I think every podcast, if you ever look at the archives, he appears at some point.
And so yeah, then when I went to WWE, they just called me by my name. And when I was a bad guy, I knocked on Vince's door one day with a pitch. I had 2 pitches for me being a bad guy, a newly created bad guy. And I said, one, can we shorten or not shorten my name, but like, can we use the moniker TJP as just a nickname or whatever? But Vince is like, he doesn't like things to be too layered. So if you're one thing, you're one thing and that's it. But he liked it because it was different. Everybody else had a full name or a first name only. And that was like the initials, that's unique. And not a lot of people have that sort of thing at the time anyway. So he was like, yes, I love it. The other pitch didn't fly. Summer Rae and I both pitched to do a Sean and Sherry type thing. Like when Sean first turned bad and he had Scary Sherry as his manager because she was like cleared to do work, but she didn't have anything to do. So she was at the arenas all the time with nothing to do. And I said, well, do you want to do a Sean and Sherry type thing? And she was all about it. But I think Vince was worried because other than me and Gulak, she was going to be taller than everybody else in the cruiserweight division. So he didn't want the cruiserweights to look like pansies or something. So he said no to that, but he said yes to the name, and he said yes to the dress. Say yes to the dress.
Alright, you talked before about your shoulder. Any other injuries you've had, or have you been able to stay good?
Oh my God. Oh, something. I kind of dislocated my elbow back in the end of March, but I saw my chiropractor like 2 days later and he put it back in place. And like once it's out of place, the only real thing you can do to fix it is put it back in, and then it's just gonna bruise and like be sore and stuff. So that was a thing that thankfully didn't require more than like a week of being super sore. But other than that, I sprained my foot in between the second and third match that I had. And that was at training doing a corner springboard kick in the corner on Chris Polk, who's like significantly taller than I am. So like really trying to reach and kick at the same time. I wasn't paying attention to the foot I was coming down on. So like if this was the floor, my ankle came down like that. Like instead of straight, it just like went on the ball of my ankle and turned purple, blew up. And everybody in my class at that time told me not to go to the hospital, just to keep working, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, y'all don't understand. It's bad. So I went to the hospital because they were not doctors. And an actual doctor told me that I shouldn't even be walking, nonetheless, trying to do head scissors and shit on some tall dudes and flopping on it again. So, yeah, that happened and it sucked. And I'm still salty about it to this day to everybody in that class.
That old mentality. No, just walk it off.
Literally, no.
Just rub some dirt on it.
Yeah, you're good.
Eat it. No, like it makes no sense. It's training. If it was a match, completely different situation. But like it was training in a hot, super hot, like industrial park in Clearwater. It was fine. I could leave.
How about you, TJ? You touched upon a couple of them already. Any big ones out there? She points to it.
And that might be the most recent one. I broke my nose last year, last summer. So I wrestled for, I don't know, a few months with a broken nose. I re-broke it at one point. And I eventually had surgery to fix it, and then probably wrestled way too early after the surgery too.
What was the initial break? What happened?
So the matches never aired, so nobody will ever see it. But it was at New Japan. They're still doing the closed set shows, so they're able to stop when it happens. But I was wrestling in a tag match, and Leo Rush got me. We were moving, and he just kicked me in the face and caught me. I think he thought that I wasn't keeping up with him, but I was, and so he put a little bit. He put a little heat on one that he thought wasn't going to reach me, but I was there for him, and it reached me. It reached me a little too much. But yeah, I broke my nose and bled all over the ring. So they had to cut it and clean up the ring, and then they ended up changing up the match. And I worked through it, and then kind of re-broke it. I think again when I was wrestling Josh, I re-broke it again, and so then I had to have surgery to fix it. That was really just the most recent one. But I mean, my injury chart looks like the back of Mick Foley's first book. He has a fun little diagram on the back of everything pointing to something that had been repaired on him. And my real injury chart looks like that. I've done both my ankles. I've broken some of my toes. I've torn multiple ligaments in both knees. I've torn part of my quad muscle. I've had a lower back injury. I've broken fingers. Dislocated finger once, had to put it back in the middle of the match. Broken my wrist. Bone chips in both my elbows. I think I've dislocated a shoulder, and I just don't know it because I never get anything diagnosed most of the time. I've strained my collarbone, my clavicle twice, my neck a couple times. Put my teeth through my lip, both of them, bottom and top.
Ooh, wait, what?
Yeah, I've the fang tooth that everybody has on the bottom, or I guess it's at the top too. I put that through my bottom lip one time. Ooh. And then another time I put some of my front teeth through my lip.
What happens there? You got to stitch the lip back up, or?
The upper, I had to have stitches inside my mouth. The bottom, I didn't, but the hole was not really my lip. It was more like underneath the lip here. So I just had a hole there, and it just scar tissue. I just have scar tissue there now. Broken a bunch of teeth. I've partially dislocated my retina, or detached my retina. That one, the doctor told me at the time, he said, "You're done. You'll be blind if you get hit again." But it was only a partial thing, so it ended up healing okay. Whatever it was, it healed okay. Got cauliflower in both my ears. Had several concussions. I'm sure I'll be a CTE study someday. I'm trying to think of what else. That's maybe about it.
I feel like there can't be anything else.
Yeah, like I said, yeah, I'd like to see that chart one day. Put that together.
Yeah, it's. I'm lucky that my face still looks the way that it does, but I mean, looks can be deceiving. I've eaten a ton in my day.
You mentioned kind of the unique thing about when you broke your nose that they were able to just kind of scrap the match and kind of do something else.
Yeah.
What was it like also just in general wrestling and closed wrestling for a little while there? Did you like it? Was it something different? Was it just another day at the office? Like, what was it like with no fans?
Well, it's tough without having like a massive sidebar to explain, like to sort of qualify why I'll say what I'm about to say, because you sort of have to peel back the curtain all the way on how we do what we do. And not that I wouldn't want to do that, but that would just take a lot of time. But the way that I was brought up to do what we do, an audience is required, because that's how you do what you do. And the way that I can describe it is to use an analogy, like for sports fans, football fans, for example, the no huddle offense. If you're a quarterback and you're doing the no huddle offense, 2-minute offense, they say in football. And so after every play, you're rushing right back to the line. You're going to read the defense, and you're going to manually call a play based on the moment and do it. And then after each play, you have to reassess. So it's just, you're trying to slow down time in your brain and reassess everything moment by moment. That's how I was taught to do this. And that's the old way of doing this. And so the requirement there is that when it's not football, for me as a wrestler, my defense is the audience. I need to read the audience. So without the audience, you're guessing. So that, I guess, as a side note, for young performers, if there's anybody that's a young performer watching this, if you're not reading your audience, you're guessing, and that's not a great thing to do. And it's a very low ratio for success there, because you're not really in control. You're guessing. So it was different. And so I had to use a lot of intuition. If I was a younger wrestler, I may not have done as well, because I wouldn't have any experience to go by. But as an older wrestler, I have a little bit of rhythm, mentally, how I perceive a viewer. So a lot of it is what I've just already read over years of understanding how people react to things and audiences and different cultures. When you travel the world, you start to learn how other people think and what entertains people of different places, different races, different ages and stuff. So it was really a lot of that. Your intuition goes out the window in a certain aspect, because there's certain tools you're not able to build with. But you can build a house with a hammer, you can build it with a wrench. You just do it a little differently.
Aria, did you have any experience with closed wrestling? How'd you get through it?
Did I have any experience with what?
The closed wrestling without the fans, where it was just studios or whatever, just recordings.
No.
MLBW.
Yeah, I did one MLW show where I managed the Dirty Blondes in Orlando, and we did like 3 matches in one day. Again, without a crowd. It sucked. It was weird. It's meant to have a crowd. Like, it's anything else. It's odd, and it doesn't feel as real without a crowd for some reason. Like, it almost feels more like, okay, this, because nobody's around, this is the same type of vibe I have at like a training match or something, but it's not that at all. So there was that. I was pregnant for a lot of that time, so I didn't, need to wrestle. But I would visit him during his shows and fly out, and it would be cute because like he would go like do all his stuff for a day at like a studio somewhere, like without any fans, just like a whole like, it felt like robotic. It sounded like go do your stuff, come right back,
clock in.
Yeah, clock in, clock out.
Go to my desk and then come back.
Because it's literally like I would wait at the hotel, and it's like every day he'd be back at the same time, and it would have been the same thing that had gone on during the day. And because I think that was still during like everyone don't even shake hands, like just do your stuff and be gone, or wait until you know what you're doing and then be gone. Like at least during some of the shows I did.
And you guys better not be going out when you get back to the hotel. You need to self-quarantine. I'm staying in my room anyway. So.
Did you get through it without ever getting sick, TJ? Or
no, we both caught COVID at one point. It was probably later into the process. It took a while to get.
I had it on my birthday.
Yeah, yeah, it was last summer. She actually was okay. It wasn't.
Yeah, how'd you get through it? Was it okay?
She had a little bit of a fever, but nothing really. She almost didn't know she was sick.
Yeah.
I had it really bad. Like I
Mm.
had like the rare cases of like long COVID, whereas like I almost would die when I was like trying to work again later after I was healed, so to speak, because my lungs took a while to recover. But I mean, it is what it is. You get sick and then you deal with it and you get over it, I guess. But yeah, we got it at one point. Like anybody else, I think everybody really. I think at this point, for the most part, everybody's sort of had to experience it now. Like it's just part of it's the flu. It's part of our world now forever. So like,
Yeah, it's not going away completely, but yeah, hopefully.
yeah, like it's going to be something we always deal with. The little man's going to have to deal with it, I'm sure, at some point, and it's just part of it. It's the chicken pox. It'll be here forever.
Yeah, no, I always feel weird about my nieces growing up because like they're almost too used to it now. Like they're used to masks and whatnot. Like yeah, they're growing up. They're like, oh, my childhood was But we mentioned before we're in Vegas now. What is Aria? Like, what's the differences? You said you miss Florida. What do you miss about Florida? What do you like or dislike about Vegas? What's the differences about wrestling in different areas?
So I don't like it here. I like Florida. It's the supreme state to me. It is where I'm born and raised, so nowhere else is like going to compare. Out here, the wrestling scene is abysmal at best.
Mm.
I often am working in Southern California or Arizona.
I might be in Arizona next year, so you might have to hook me up with some some leads.
Hopefully, I won't be here though.
It's pretty thin. Pretty thin in Nevada. Yeah.
Yeah, even in Arizona, it's not a ton. Like in Florida, I think like one time Speedy counted, and we had like 93 promotions or something. Like
we're down to 92, I believe, but yeah.
Oh, I'd love to know what went away.
I'm just kidding.
But because in Florida, there's just so much more of a population, and it's like Vegas is a population for entertainment, but not necessarily wrestling. So like there are people out here, and I feel like it's growing. Like before we got out here, I didn't know much about Vegas wrestling, and like just seeing it now on social media and stuff, it seems like more people from this region are getting opportunities, more shows and stuff. So that's nice. At least it's not completely dead. I do like being able to get to new markets though. Like Southern California is great. There's a lot of different shows. Like he was talking about the Lucha Libre shows, which like in Florida, like we don't really have, especially like authenticity that he has. Like they're so much closer to Mexico. They're gonna have a more authentic lucha show. Like our shows in Florida are like luchadors might be good, but it's not that same authenticness. And
YouTube lucha.
Yeah, it's fun to experience that and still have like regular wrestling shows, work different women, and just I don't know. It's like starting over in a way because I don't really know these people. I'm reaching out to promoters again, being like, "Hi, I exist. Like, book me." So but I miss Florida.
Why? Who chose Vegas? Well, what was the origination of Vegas?
Well, I had already lived out here, and to be honest, I mean, this is not ideal for me either. I just like. The home I'm in, I only plan to have it for a little bit because it was really more of an investment, like to flip it and build a nest egg and either get back to California or somewhere else, after it. So this won't probably be like we're not long for this city, probably.
Clearwater, but
I was gonna say, what's the next step, guys? We're looking at Florida. We're looking at Cali.
Both.
Yeah, we primarily want to get James near a set of his grandparents and in a place where like for her, like stuff like medical and education is like primary, like it's more important. So Nevada's kind of tough.
God, it's dog shit.
And so I mean, both of those options are better than here, and we would be closer to one home or the other. One Disneyland or another, and more family, so it'll be a lot easier once we do.
This has not been a good commercial for Vegas.
Okay, come visit here. That's fun. Don't
Okay.
live. Don't live
Okay.
here.
Don't stay. TJ, what about you, man? You've been literally, I would imagine, everywhere. First of all, is there anywhere you haven't been that you would like to go?
I asked him this recently.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, what's left?
She made me count the states, and I want to say I don't know, it's like maybe 45 of the 50 states.
Okay, what's missing state-wise?
You know, I kind of already forgot what our list was. It's like
Delaware.
I mean, yeah, like no, I've done Delaware. I mean, it was
Okay.
like I don't know, New Hampshire, Vermont,
Okay.
like some places that probably
The Dakotas.
like Wyoming, places that don't really have wrestling, I guess.
Or people.
Alaska, I've never been to Alaska.
Oh, is it WrestlePro? There you go. Get to Alaska.
So Follow's always going up to Alaska.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll figure something out. But I don't know. I mean, there's not really a lot left on the bucket list. I mean, there wasn't really a lot to begin with, to be honest. But I don't know. I mean, and internationally, I've for the most part been everywhere. I've lived in a lot of places. Like not even just visited, but like I've lived in Japan. I've lived in Mexico. I had an extended stay in Spain once. So maybe not quite lived, but like I kind of lived in Barcelona for a couple of weeks. And I've been to England and Paris and different places, Germany. Actually, I had a first recently. I worked in Costa Rica, and I've never been to Costa Rica before. It's beautiful. I want to work there again so I could take her on vacation. I feel like she would love it. It's like a perfect mixture of Southern California and Florida. It's like if you merge the two in like a weird Marvel movie, like multiverse thing, it would be
Multiverse Costa Rica.
Yeah. Because it was like tropical, but not quite as humid as like Florida, but maybe not quite as dry as California. It was pretty similar to California because California doesn't feel that dry, but yeah, it was nice. But I mean, and I've lived in Canada for a little bit. I lived in the Toronto area for like half a year or so. I mean, there's not a lot that it's like, man, that's a stone left unturned, I guess you could say. Just want to do it till the wheels fall off, I guess. As long as I'm of value to somebody or can help somebody or pay the bills, I'm happy to do it. I love what I do.
Do you ever find do you go, does the place take in factor of like maybe your wrestling style? Like, does it matter like if you're in Mexico, Japan, Alabama, like does that ever change like the mindset?
Not necessarily. It changes a little bit because you got to read your audience. You have to entertain your audience. Obviously, you don't want to go on stage with Hamlet and you have an audience full of people that are expecting and want Star Wars. Not that you want to just like carry around a bag of books with you, so to speak, but you want to be able to adapt and give them something that's either universally relatable, or in some ways cater to them in a little bit. It's a compromise. So, it changes a little bit, but not drastically, not to the degree where I'm like a brand new person with everywhere I go, I guess, because then you stop being an entity in and of yourself if you do that. You have to there's a fine line between it.
Aria, what's the longest drive you've had to make so far for wrestling?
I would say the days that I would go to and from Atlanta in the same day were probably pretty brutal, especially when I would do them by myself. Those are about 8 hours each way leaving Clearwater. But drove from there to Vegas. That was the longest drive I've just ever done, period. And some wrestling came from that.
I might be doing the drive to Arizona soon, so wish me luck.
That's the drive because Vegas is only a couple hours from there.
There you go.
Yeah, minute-wise, like the state is nearby, and then to get to like Phoenix and shit is like 4.5 hours. So.
Oh, okay. I see. You'll be in Phoenix soon.
Yes.
TJ, what about you? What's the longest drive you've had to make so far?
Let's see. Well, when during the period that has been way over broadcasted from places that I worked when I was homeless. The first few Evolve shows and like some of the Dragon Gate USA shows at the time. So I was homeless. And I was really just kind of basically restarting my career over again. And so being around Florida folks here in this conversation, you guys will understand this. At the time, I was homeless in Florida and I was in the Tampa area. So, I wasn't able to get back into the more prominent places like the Ring of Honors, the PWGs, or something like that. So I was like starting over, like forget New Japan, CMLL, and all this stuff. That those everywhere had filled up. I was starting over at like ACW and stuff like that. So
ACW.
so like
That one.
people don't understand, I guess, like I wasn't homeless like as like an up and coming wrestler trying to make it like in training school or something. Like I just slept in my car out of choice. I did it like literally out of survival because we're in the middle of a recession. It was 2009, 2010 at the time, and you couldn't get a job in Florida. It was especially tough. So I was trying to work at Baskin Robbins or gas stations or whatever, anything. And you couldn't do it. I mean, there was college graduates in these job interviews with me that were getting denied. And here I am. I've been a wrestler since I was 13. I barely finished high school. I have no education, no work experience. And I'm 23, 24 at the time, something like that. And I can't explain why I have never had a job in my life because they're not going to understand wrestling. So the only way I literally could eat and not starve to death was to do like a Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday night show at Bourbon Street or something and just get 10, 15 bucks and, buy a couple Happy Meals or something and eat for a couple days. That was it. That's how I ate. And so when I was starting to do more prominent shows, the trade-off was I was basically back like kind of on the crew again. So I would be riding to like these Evolve shows in New Jersey, Chicago, something like that, like on a pile of ring ropes and turnbuckles. So I'd be sitting on that for 32 hours or whatever, do this show, no hotel, no anything, just pack the ring right back up, sit on my pile of turnbuckles and drive right back to Tampa for another 30 hours, whether I was hurt, dirty, sweaty, whatever. I just didn't shower for like 2.5 days, basically. So those were probably the most like brutal ones as far as length goes, because we were driving forever, and everybody knows Gabe and Sal are penny pinchers, so you weren't getting a room or anything.
I saw Sal 2 days ago.
But thankfully, the part of that trade-off was, on top of doing that and like riding in the crew truck and also not getting paid for these shows, Sal did put a roof over my head during that time. So he finally gave me a place to stay, so I wasn't sleeping in laundromats. So that was good. He kind of saved my life in that way. So those were the longest drives then. Those were tough. Sitting in that packed van or ring truck, it's terrible.
Absolutely. Aria, what are some of the matches that are still on your bucket list? Who would you really like to get in the ring with?
I would like to wrestle. Melina and Mickey James are still the from the Divas era when I started watching wrestling. Like they're I think the only ones still active. So either of those matches or both of them would just be dreams come true. But I really also have wanted to wrestle Allison Kay for a long time. We've wrestled like in training matches, but never like in a like during a live event. Same I think with Jessica Havoc. We've never wrestled on a live kind of show either, but again, like at some of the different schools in Florida we have. So if I could wrestle any of them and like literally anybody from like Stardom, they're all fantastic.
And TJ, you kind of said before that like your answer might be the next one, just whoever the next one is. So I'll rephrase a little bit here for you. Who has kind of impressed you recently? Has there any names stood out to you where you're like, oh, that person's got some potential, maybe some newer people, or who's impressed you? Who's on your radar?
I've wrestled them, but it actually I'll name him anyway, and it's not like he gets his flowers every week anyway. But Daniel Garcia impresses me because he hasn't been doing it very long. like he's not like a rookie, but I mean, he's I think like 5 or less years in. So to be on national TV and to also have a reputation for being, pretty good at this, that's pretty good. Like for that amount of time. So I thought about that recently, just because I know I see Daniel in a lot of places, New Japan, stuff like that, and I think that he would fit sort of for that part of the question. And other guys, maybe for different reasons. Like I've pulled Danny Limelight recently aside to kind of express some of that. I've seen him kind of really overhaul and like kind of turn the corner on who he's probably meant to be as a performer. Because I mean, he was just a skinny local San Diego kid. I mean, literally just a couple years ago. I mean, you could see the bones in his chest. He was so skinny, and like he didn't. It's not that he didn't know what he was doing, but he was very like bright-eyed, sort of deer in the headlights a little bit. Didn't know how to get out of San Diego. Really wanted to learn a lot. Was always asking questions from anybody who he could find, and that's something that I admire because I've always done that. I've always picked guys' brains. Like I said, I've always been on a mission to find mentors, and I could never find them. So I always enjoyed helping him, but now it's like he's filled out. He's become such a well-rounded performer and a great character. Gets in his fair share of trouble, but but that's part of becoming I think that's part of maturing and especially in this business, learning how to handle yourself, and he's come so far. When I see him on MLW now, I pull him aside a lot and I tell him, like, you're doing the work that you've always intended on doing, and you've hit that point. I let him know so that he doesn't forget it. And there's probably several others, but those guys come to mind. Chris Bay too. He hasn't been doing it terribly long, and he's a borderline superstar in the eyes of a lot of people. Probably held back by a position that he's far outgrown in Impact, but I'm sure that the moon is waiting for him when he chooses to grab it. I mean, he's there.
Absolutely, not some great names right there. You mentioned before about how if the right offer was made, the tights can come off and give you that clipboard. Is that something you could see yourself doing in the future? Not necessarily tomorrow, but a few years from now, 10 years, whatever.
I'll do it tomorrow. I don't mind.
Or tomorrow.
Yeah. Maybe not tomorrow. I got to do the Super Juniors first, but
yeah, get that in first.
I've committed to it. They got to process another visa. I don't do it. So, no, I mean, I would, and I would love to do that. I wish that I'd be able to do that and continue doing what I do. But, in some places you have to make a choice, and rightfully so. I understand that. So I guess it would kind of depend on how I feel like allotting, my physical investment in all this. For me, if the wheels keep turning, I'll keep doing it in the ring. And so far, I feel better now than I probably did when I was 22. To be honest, as an athlete, I feel great. I feel fine. So I've been blessed with genes that make me look like I'm much younger than I am. People still think that I'm 21 years old a lot of times. If I didn't have all these tattoos, people would ID check me all the time.
Yeah, if I had been a fan of yours since like 2004, yeah, I would have just said, yeah, you're 20 something for sure.
Yeah, so as long as I fit the mold, I'll keep doing it as I do. But yeah, I do look forward to transitioning into that part someday because I've spent a long time getting a good education in this, and not a lot of people do. At a certain point, they decide to hang up the books and just perform only. And I've enjoyed adding to my library, so to speak, up here. So I do enjoy the idea of transitioning into that at some point, especially if we can't keep this little fool out of the ring, which we're hoping that he won't. But if he does, then it would be nice if Dad is around to help guide the way. So of course I look forward to doing it.
Future tag champions, just throwing that out there. Same thing for you, Aria.
Penzer wants that. He's said it. He refuses to retire until he can announce me and James as a team someday. I told him I told him I'm actively working against you, friends, because we're trying to keep him out of the ring. But we'll see.
Same with you, Aria. When the wrestling days are done, many, many, many years from now, do you see yourself sticking around, helping the next generation, or being a producer yourself? Like, where do you see yourself after the wrestling itself is done?
She's already doing
Yeah, I like to help people as much as I can. I don't know. I think a producer role would be really cool. I remember during like MLW shoots, that was some of my favorite part was seeing how production worked and like filming pre-tapes, interviews, everything outside the ring. But we do want one more baby, so I might be busy taking care of them.
Any
Um,
time frame on that? When were we thinking that?
Maybe within the next like 3-ish years, probably. I don't know. I have some stuff I want to do first.
We mentioned before, TJ, you've got one of your old masks, the medallion. Any other big kind of cool things you've collected over the years from your career?
Yeah, I have a. I don't. I kind of refuse to put anything up in the house outside of this one room. I put some stuff in my office, and I've only kind of done that the last couple of years. I had everything kind of boxed up, really, for the most part. Like some things I had, I'm not too terribly nostalgic about things, but there was some stuff gathered up just collecting dust in boxes, and like my family and people kind of encouraged me. You should put this up and display. And even if not for me, for like James or something like that, like it might be nice to kind of know where they came from, so to speak, someday. So I started putting stuff up in the room. And I don't know. I mean, I have, I have a couple cases for like titles that I've won that have been given to me. I'll probably add to those things if anything comes up in the future. A bunch of the stuff from the Cruiserweight show, like I have the outfit, the shoes, the title, all of that in a case in the office. The Suicide suit and the X Division title, I got that. Some of the stuff that I find cooler is like I tore one of the posters off the wall of so in Mexico it's almost like a time warp, like the 1940s or 50s. Like they still have those old plaster like
Okay.
giant like wallpaper style like posters for the weekly cards, like on the brick wall at the outside of a building in the city or something like that. And they change every week or whatever. And I tore one of them off the wall that had one of the main events that me and the guys did down in Mexico when I was 18 for CMLO. And I have one of that. Like it's literally just like a ripped piece of this giant thing, and I framed it, and that's in there. And I really like that just because just even the paper is like, it's not even white. It's like this golden, like sepia toned like paper now. So it looks like I wrestled in the 40s, but I got that. And I got like a patch that came off of the first New Japan jumpsuit when I was first as a young lion in the dojo, and some pictures of when I was younger then in there. I have some of the concept art that the guys that did my merchandise in WWE, like the video game T-shirts and stuff. They turned some of the concept art for the shirts into posters, like movie posters. I have some of those hanging in there. So I got some stuff like that. Some masks that some of the wrestlers had given me, like Atlantis Jr. has given me his mask, and then some of the guys that like that. I have little keepsakes of mine that are, from friends that are in there that are pretty cool. That for me, they're pretty cool, but not a lot. And I got all my old gear just packed up in the closet. And someday, I'm sure the kiddo will put it on, like the entrance jackets and things. I heard Shawn Michaels told me he still has all of his old outfits in his mom's house, like in the attic.
Oh, wow.
So you can go see all the old, like the armor that he would wear to the ring, the suits and stuff. So I've kept all that for that reason, that maybe the kids will want to go through it someday.
You gotta have the figures too. How many of your own figures do you have?
Yeah. I only just kept one of each that they did. I had a couple from Mattel, and then a couple from other companies, like a Suicide Figure, and then Lucha Libre USA. I did a masked character there called Sadistico. It was an MTV show, and I have a figure from that. But for the most part, like my mom took all the stuff. Like
you gotta get some loose ones for the kid.
Well, like so when you get a figure, Mattel will send you a box of like, I don't know, 20 of them. And so I grabbed one of each, and I have them in there. But then my mom took the rest and gave them to family, or just has them in her house. So he has to go to grandma's to play with the figure.
There you go.
But someday when grandma isn't so cool to him, that'll be the bargaining chip. Like if you want to see some of dad's shit, you gotta go see grandma.
You got anything yourself, Aria, that you've collected over the years?
No. I don't
Maybe
really
your old gear anywhere.
I try to sell that
She
as much as I can.
The most unnostalgic person I've ever met. She
I don't save anything.
If she owns anything for 2 months, she sells it.
Yeah, I don't like holding on to possessions for a long time. Like I am a minimalist in theory, but like execution, I'm still working on.
I'd say that maybe fits me more. I'm a minimalist in theory, but I have too much shit to be a minimalist. But you really are truly a minimalist.
I am. I don't like to have a bunch of stuff.
I was say I don't think I've ever even showed you, but I made a trading card of you a long time ago. I don't know if we shown it. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I made it for a bunch of the original RPW people. I always meant to get you to sign it, but then I've never seen you lately.
I will come back someday, I promise. Hopefully sooner than later. I want to visit at least.
Absolutely. Well, let's find out now the origin of you two. How does this become a thing? Where do you guys meet?
We met at an Evolve show, and literally it was just like a hi, nice to meet you. And then he went off to WWE. I did my thing, and we reconnected on Instagram like just before the pandemic started, because like I had creeped on his page and would like all his stuff, and he was like, "Who's this?" And I was like, "It's me." So we started talking, and
I went to MLW before we reconnected and met. And she had just left MLW for a brief period, and so I thought, okay, well, I'll get a chance to meet her and like see what she's getting at. And she wasn't there, and so I had to kind of ask our mutual friends. I was asking people that we knew mutually, like, hey, what's her deal? Like, I would love to meet her and talk to her and all that. It was, I don't know, I guess it's similar to like when I heard that Sean was meeting his wife, who was a Nitro girl, and they're in the industry together, but it's mostly that they connected through mutual friends, and then the rest was history. And that's pretty much how it was with us, except for it was funny because we did have one mutual friend that helps me talk to her initially, but this mutual friend thought that I wanted to talk to them, and I was like, no, you're mistaken. I don't want to date you. I want to date. I want to meet her.
I was going to ask for the name, but never mind now.
I'm trying to think how I can give you hints.
I accidentally. I don't think they were heartbroken or anything, but like I accidentally disappointed somebody initially.
A person I can't give you a hint without it being obvious.
All right, we'll off air. We'll talk. And so it just kind of grew from there.
Yeah. Worked out well.
Yeah, we I
met each other and said,
I flew.
I'll have a minute with this.
I flew out to Florida to take her on our first date, and I took her to Disney. We just went to Disney Springs and had dinner, and I did a trail of rose petals and candles and the whole 9 yards, and wanted to make her feel nice and make a good impression. And the rest is history. We would, because we lived on separate coasts and I was working a lot of our first dates were her. I would have to like fly her to different parts of the country, like so that we could spend time together. So I would go to like Nashville or something for Impact, and I'd fly her out to see me, and we would spend a few days like in the quarantine hotel together, and which made quarantining easy because then I never had a reason to leave my room. So we would just order pizza and watch movies, and I would go to work and come back, and or I'd fly to Florida, and we would just go on our date out there and things like that, and eventually we had the same life plans too. Like we both wanted to be married and start a family and everything. Everything matched up really well. And so once the kiddo was about to be on the way, we had to decide where to live. And I obviously have semi-permanent roots at the moment, so it was a no-brainer that we would have to come out here for the time being. But it was pretty much it. It was very natural. It just came about that way.
I was just watching while he stares at you. It was very nice. One of the most important questions I always ask here is, seen any good movies lately?
Well, she doesnn believe in watching movies.
Hold on. I don't really watch movies.
She doesn't have the attention span for it.
Severely bad, unmedicated, ADD, ADHD. It's hard for me to even sit and watch wrestling.
You need to stop nurturing it with TikTok. You're training yourself for 20-second intervals of attention. You have to switch to something else.
No. I saw part of Batman when I was at.
You like part of it? Okay.
I saw part of it when I was at a wrestling school recently, and in between my turn in the ring, just people had it on, so I saw parts of it, and I was like, "Nah, this one doesn't seem as interesting." So that's my take on the new Batman from what I kind of saw. Meh, it's kind of interesting.
Meh, for the chunk of it you saw. Okay.
He can give you a much better answer.
All right. Let's see. Have you seen any full movies lately, TJ?
Actually. So for those that have not had a kid, this helps answer the question. When your child is born, your schedule is very severely changed, and you kind of have to live in 3-hour intervals basically, because you have to feed the kid every 2 to 3 hours, and the kid is on a 24-hour clock. The baby's not going to sleep it's generally going to sleep all the time, but at the same time it also doesn't have a sleep cycle, so it's kind of always going to wake up every 2 to 3 hours because you have to continue feeding it, and it doesn't have a night and day, so to speak, yet. She is a morning person and naturally gets up around 7 a.m. just to start her day, no matter what. I have always been an evening person, and so I am always staying up late. So it worked out well for us because we would just sleep in shifts. I would stay up until 5 or 6 a.m. So I'd stay up a little later, a couple hours later than I normally would, and she would get up a couple hours earlier, and then we would both be awake from about noon till, say, 9 or 10 at night. So we'd kind of have a normal day together. The reason I say this is that every night I would have to find ways to kill time with James, staying up all night. So, I would normally be up till maybe 2 a.m. anyway, but I had to figure out, 3, 4, 5 a.m., what am I going to do for a few hours? So every single night I would watch a new movie with them. So I've been watching a ton of movies, some stuff I've already seen, and anything I wanted to catch up on since since she can't watch movies. And we don't really watch a lot of movies together, but I'll watch them with James otherwise. So, the new Ghostbusters, I saw that late. Afterlife, I saw that late. So when I was able to stream, I watched that with James. I watched The Batman a little bit ago, a few days ago with James. What else? The new Resident Evil movie that had come out recently, which was more accurate to the games. I watched that with him. Scream, the new Scream, I watched that with him as well. Other times we just binge other stuff. I binged Tales from the Crypt with James. But what we tend to watch more shows together. We binge Always Sunny. Our first few days. our first few dates, we were binging Tiger King because that was around the time, that it was kind of more recently had come out. And true to pretty much every girl on earth, she loves true crime stories and stuff like that. So sometimes we'll find one that piques our interest, and just different documentary type stuff like that. Love on the Spectrum, she loves that.
It's adorable.
It is one of the most adorable shows ever. But yeah, so we'll binge some of those things. And recently I've been the only thing. I don't watch a lot of TV. Most of the TV I'll watch is like sports and stuff like that. So I very rarely watch television. But I've been watching Winning Time. Ironically, it's a sports one. It's about the Lakers. But yeah, I've watched that a lot. So it's hard to get her to sit down for more than 30 minutes without falling asleep.
That's the only time I sit down.
Yeah.
You mentioned Scream and whatnot. What's some of the memorabilia behind you? I see some horror.
Actually,
what we got over here?
Decorated this. Some of these were just Halloween decorations. The mask was actually part of a Halloween costumes. There's a year-round horror store,
Nightmare Toys,
in town. See, she says she hates Vegas, but there is actually a lot of stuff that she finds.
Cool shit.
She does find a lot of cool stuff that you wouldn't find in other cities. And they have a wall of replica Jason masks from every movie, because they change in every movie. So I got one from number 3 that was like my favorite one. And the Freddy Krueger glove and the hat and the mini Freddy Krueger, some of that, Freddy's my favorite horror character, and Nightmare is my favorite movie. Anyway, this stuff was just meant for like Halloween. Some of it was just costume stuff, but she actually put it up on the wall when I was on a road trip one day. So now she decorated the house with it. She's way more creative than I am. I don't know what I'm doing. She figures it out. This is the scariest right here, the high chair. It's where James makes a mess every morning.
That's a horror show. Now I gotta ask you, since the shirt, what's your favorite Blink album and or song?
God, my favorite song is probably "Damn It." I prefer when they have like 2 different versions of it from when Travis Barker came on. I prefer Travis. He's also from like my hometown, where I grew up in Southern California, because he's from like the Inland Empires. That's where I came up, just outside of LA. That might be my favorite album, but I really liked Jacket a lot. That might have been my favorite album, as far as like more songs on that I really enjoyed. That was like in high school at the time, so it just felt like it connected with me at an age where it was a little bit more fitting. But I like some of their newer stuff. I like the stuff with Matt, in Tom's place. And you can't replace Tom, but like I've always liked Alkaline Trio. So I liked when he came on. Like I love Parking Lot on was it the California album? Yeah, I like that. So some of their newer stuff, I really like the way that they've evolved over the years. And I like a lot of Mark's collaborations with other, because it seems like he reaches out and does other, like first he did Plus 44?
44, yeah.
But then like he's done some like one-offs, like songs with like Neck Deep and stuff like that. I like a lot of that stuff, because I felt like Mark was more of like the pop punk guy, and Tom felt a little bit more like experimental. Because like Angels and Airwaves was a totally different sound.
Yeah.
And very, very new. It just felt very progressive as far as music goes. And now I feel like it's funny because he left Blink, but I feel like Blink starts to sound a little bit more like Angels and Airwaves, like as far as changing their sound a little bit. But yeah, I've always liked Mark's stuff, because it just felt like he was a little bit more pop punk from the original.
Aria, I hope you have an answer too.
For my favorite Blink song?
Yes.
I was thinking about it. I think the first one I ever heard was Always. So I like that. Yes. Can you kind of bend your arm in a weird way to show that off?
Yeah. I have a tattoo of the lyric from "I Miss You."
Which lyric?
We can live like Jack and Sally.
Oh, yeah. If we want, yeah.
And then I have the cover art, but with Jack.
Him. Nice.
Yeah, instead of the smiley face.
Very nice.
Yeah, so I like those ones. I would also say Girl with the Rock Show is probably my favorite, though.
Yeah, that was from Jackie.
Yeah.
I like that song a lot.
That whole album's good. Yeah, that's probably the album I listened to the most. That was on nonstop for a while. Who else? What's some other bands we were into over here?
I like All Time Low.
Yeah. Oh,
That's my favorite band.
Those are two that they're one of our first mutual bands that we really connected over was All Time Low.
Yes. Really like them. Bring Me the Horizon, Neck Deep, like he said. What about you?
What else do you like that we both kind of like? Some of the stuff that it's funny because for her it's older, but I still consider it newer stuff just because like, I'm a few years older than her. But like Pierce the Veil, like we both kind of like Pierce the Veil. But for her, it's like, oh, Pierce the Veil, I used to listen to them back in the day. And for me, I'm like, oh, like back in the day, I used to listen to Rancid. You know, like I don't know. Back in the day, for me, is like the Beach Boys or something. But what else is good that we like? I'm trying to think of stuff that we like together. You know,
I feel like I listed it all. Anything that kind of sounds like those bands, really.
Yeah, we both like MCR.
Yeah. Emo things.
Yeah, like. Yeah, there's and sometimes I'll play stuff that were like, I mean, I guess they never got past being like indie bands, like smaller indie bands that were like very pop punk that were, you know, contemporary for me at the time. I'm trying to think, like the Loved Ones, they were never really a big band, but like I'll play stuff and she'll ask me like about it or like had not heard it before, but it kind of fits into those genres, but she probably didn't hear it at the time because when she was kind of just getting into like emo and stuff like that, like they didn't hit where as like in the same way that those other bands are bigger, like they didn't hit in ways that she could hear it. So some of them, like I've heard it from different experiences and we'll share those ones. I think we both like Simple Plan a little bit. There's other older ones that she'll probably like some of it, but not all of it. Like I still like, you know, like some of the like the original like classic like pop punk bands like Sum 41 or like Newfound Glory, you know, stuff like that. So she'll like some of it, maybe not all of it, but a lot of it she'll like.
You guys ever listen to Motion City Soundtrack?
Oh yeah, I love Motion City Soundtrack.
Love them. Just want to see if we agree. Let's talk about something exciting you've got coming up here in just a couple days, TJ. Best of the Super Juniors, man. Block B, yes, Block B. Are you looking forward to this? Anyone? Do you know who your first match is? Are you looking forward to tangling with anyone? Are you looking to avoid anyone?
First match.
I don't know what my first match is. No, that's like 4 or 5
minutes. Oh, I don't know then.
Yeah, those are just the main events listed. So me and Desperado have a main event on one of the nights. It's not the first night though. I want to avoid ELP as long as possible because he's a fucking goofball. I feel like we just mess around him in there. He's a goofball in the best sort of way, though. He's one of the most talented guys I've ever been in the ring, to be honest. So I actually look forward to wrestling him often. And he's a lot like me. Like people don't realize it, but he's actually he takes initiative a lot, and he tends to put a lot of matches together that he's involved in. So he's kind of in the same vein as me, where he's sort of a leader in the ring. You wouldn't know it. But Robbie Eagles, I look forward to kicking his ass again. I think I asked him that this week. I asked him which night I was going to kick his ass. Lindemann is really popular, and I've not seen a lot of his stuff. And so I look forward to not even just getting in the ring with him, but I look forward to seeing him. he's in my block, so that should be a lot of fun. And there's other guys that I've Wheeler Yuta, to answer a question from earlier. Like, he's another guy that, like, it wasn't that long ago that not a lot of people knew him or knew of him or anything like that. And he's really talented. And he's a quiet guy, and I feel like he's turned this massive corner and for himself. And so I look forward to that. And I'm thankful that he's in my block too, because then we'll get to get in the ring together. We're not in the same block, but I look forward to eventually being around my new partner, Akira. I joke that I got a new partner, and he's Luigi from Super Mario, basically. But yeah, the Fireball, man. I look forward to doing stuff with him and being part of, past the Super Juniors now, like being part of the junior tag title scene and trying to go for that with him will be a lot of
fun. What advice would you give? And we'll start with Aria. What advice would you give if someone came up to you after the show saying, "Hey, I'm starting to get into pro wrestling"? You just roll your eyes, tell them to go away. And what advice would you give to somebody that's just starting out in the business?
Make sure it is what you want to do, because it is such a commitment and dedication. You can't half-ass it. Make sure you're going to a school that is going to train you properly and not just take your money. Do your research, get your body right if you need to. Get an idea as soon as you can for like the character you want to portray, and how would that person dress? What moves would they do? How would they react in a match, and cut promos and all that, and study tape. And I don't know, it's a lot of it just pretty much, I feel like, comes down to do your research. Like, make sure you're not getting in over your head. You can afford what you're about to, endeavor on, and be ready to be sore but happy. And you're going to be sad, but you're also going to be living your dreams. And it's peaks and valleys, but it's the greatest.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
God, I have no idea. Hopefully we have our second baby by then, or if not, several dogs. Hopefully still wrestling. And hopefully not waiting for somebody to come back home from Japan.
Same thing, TJ, going back. What advice would you give if someone who came up to you like after a show? Hey, I'm just starting to get into pro wrestling. What advice would you give to someone just starting out?
Don't. No. The best piece of advice I've ever been given, and it's an old saying in wrestling, and if you don't understand it, it's kind of hokey, I guess. But there's so much wisdom to it, and it keeps you grounded. And that advice is the only thing that's real is the money and the miles. It's the best advice I've ever been given.
And the hose.
Sometimes not that. But yeah, I mean, it keeps you grounded, it keeps you focused, and everything will come and go. And there's some stuff that is applicable to you that isn't real, or just it's only applicable to you, and it's not part of the growth of the industry or the group or everybody else. And like your creative or all these things, your legacy, all this stuff, and it's fake. It's not tangible. Those aren't tangible things. But at the end of the day, if you're able to support a family off of this job, and what you're willing to put yourself through in order to do it, that's what's real. And as long as you stay focused on that, everything else will fall into place. I mean, it keeps you grounded. It keeps you focused on things that matter the most. It's easy to forget. You start making good money sometimes, and you forget, and you start going, over prioritizing creative things or stuff like that. And people will probably shake their head like, how could you over, value that? But it's like, sometimes you start to sacrifice things that aren't necessary in order to pursue something that's very selfish, and you don't need to do that. Keep the lights on, keep your kids fed. That's the most important thing. So that would be my advice. And the only other thing I'd say is have fun. If you don't enjoy what you're doing, you're not going to seek out the answers to the questions that you have, because you just simply won't be motivated to do it. You'll give up. You'll move on to something else. So as long as you're having fun, you'll be motivated to get better at whatever it is you do. When you're a kid and you pick up a new activity or something that you really love doing, nobody has to tell you to be disciplined or to work hard at it or be on time. You'll start missing meals because you forget to eat because you're so focused on doing this fucking thing that building this puzzle or this erector set or whatever the fuck you're doing. That is the best thing for somebody's life, when you literally will forget to eat because you're so enamored with this thing that you're doing. So I tell people, have fun, but above anything else, have fun, because you won't. This is a hard game. You're, like I said, I wasn't lucky enough to have people hold my hand in it. I didn't have mentors. I had people actively work against me most of the time. So there was tons of times where I had questions that nobody could answer, and so much of what we do is subjective. It's not all of it is objective, right or wrong. A lot of it's just shades of gray. It's entertainment. So when you have a question, it's even harder when there's no right answer. You're looking for efficiency, or you're looking for just the best possible answer, not just the right one, because there's no such thing as the right one. And so it's hard when you have to answer those questions all on your own. And if you're not having fun, fuck, that's where everybody bails out. Gotta have fun.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Probably in the same type of place I am now. If there's one thing I learned is that, we all have way more time than we think we do, and things move so fast in a short amount of time if things work the right way. So, 5 years may seem like a long time to a lot of people, but man, I've been doing this for 24 years, and 5 years is not long. And so if I'm blessed to be in roughly the same sort of position I am now, then I'm lucky. But I think that hopefully that'll be the case.
All right, let's get into some plugs. Any merch plugs? Where can people support you?
ProWrestlingTees.com/Aria Blake. If you want to watch some of my matches, YouTube.com/Aria Blake. Instagram is the Aria Blake, and that's my most active platform. But Twitter is I'm Aria Blake. That's the only one that's different.
All right, TJ.
I'm pretty easy. I don't really like a lot of socials. I don't have a Facebook, so if anybody comes across a Facebook, I didn't make it. So my manager, I think, may have made one for me, but I don't operate it. I'm not really big on having social media. I have the things that you're expected to have, but I have a Twitter and an Instagram. Both are at Mega TJP. The one thing I enjoy doing is streaming on Twitch. So I have a Twitch channel that's also Mega TJP. I don't have a schedule on it because I travel so much. So it's usually, once or twice a week maybe, and it's always at a random day. I have a Pro Wrestling Tees store. I'm sure anybody who's watching this will be able to navigate that. If you end up on the TJP promotion merchandise store, then
Tokyo Joshi Pro Wrestling.
Then just buy one of their shirts. That's fine with me. You can actually find a lot of my stuff also on Tokon Shop. I have a couple shirts in New Japan, and obviously the United Empire group shirt. Get some of that stuff too. But otherwise, I don't really have anything else that I pitch. For the most part, I would like to be more reclusive if I could, but I guess I'm expected to post pictures or act like a human being every now and then. So I'll try to use my stuff to talk about sports or some bullshit.
Of course, you've got the Best of Super Juniors this weekend. Anywhere else we can catch you at sometime soon, TJ?
Yeah, I'm usually pretty regular with MLW now as well. I'm going to miss some time now because of the Super Juniors, so I might be off for a little bit as far as getting back into the swing of things even when I come back. But usually you can find me on MLW, CMLL down in Mexico. I travel down to Mexico intermittently because they're a sister company to New Japan. So those three are kind of the pretty big ones, and that's for the most part why I've kind of wrapped with Impact a little bit, because a lot of the time has been shifted to those in New Japan and everything. And occasionally when I could fit it in, you can find me on the independents. Seems like a lot of times you can maybe find me when I have the time to do them, like Warrior Wrestling, House of Glory. They'll have me in semi regularly, but. Yeah, for the most part, I mean, those big three are where I spend most of my time. So we'll see if that continues at that same pace. Who knows what the future holds.
All right, where can we find you at soon?
I will be doing Lingerie Fighting Championships next week, next Friday. The day after that, I have Arizona Wrestling Federation. Weekend after that, the 21st, I have Star Pro and Stoner and Championship Wrestling are holding a show together. And on the 28th, it's not a wrestling event like a show, but it's a signing and like big party at Nerd Bar in Las Vegas on the 28th from noon to 3. It's called Wrestle Swap, and it'll be fun.
All right. Any last pearls of wisdom? Any parting words that you guys can bestow upon us?
Just away from the Axeman, I guess.
Thank you for being interested in us. If you listen to this, parting words of wisdom. He had something.
What do you mean?
I don't know. I have nothing. I thought I had something.
It's been truly a pleasure, guys. We've had plenty of pearls of wisdom today. I've truly enjoyed this talk. Hopefully, people will definitely enjoy it as well. TJ Perkins, Aria Blake, follow them. They're doing great, wonderful things for the past several years, for the next several years, until that clipboard is handed. So for TJP, Aria Blake, this is JPO. You know what to do. Every podcast says the same things. Like, subscribe, hit the bell, yada yada. Tell a friend. You know what? Tell an enemy. Make amends. And call your grandpa. He misses you. Good night.